Hey everybody, I'm Logan Allec. I'm a CPA. I own Choice Tax Relief, where I and my team of tax professionals represent our clients before the IRS and state taxing authorities to get them into the best possible resolution for their situation. Now, if you want to learn more about me, you can pop my name into Google. You'll see all the places that I've been quoted in about taxes and tax relief. Here's what you can do if you can't pay your tax bill. Stuff in Forbes, how to minimize taxes when investing, our tax relief service is worth it. 7 red flags that could trigger an IRS audit of your taxes. But enough about me. What are we talking about today? Today we're talking about an IRS notice that is one of the most significant notices that you can receive from the IRS. It comes in certified mail because it's required by law. And this notice is described by many as the end of the line with the IRS. What am I talking about? I'm talking about IRS Notice LT11. You can see a redacted version of one that one of our clients received. You can tell it's an LT11 because it says LT11 right up there in the upper right-hand corner. In this video, I'm going to tell you what the Notice LT11 is, why you received the Notice LT11. Then I'm going to go through this redacted LT11 part by part, page by page. And then finally, at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you exactly what you should do if you received IRS Notice LT11. So first, what is the IRS Notice LT11? This is basically the IRS's notification to you that, hey, we have sent you lots of other notices about your tax debt that you owe. It doesn't look like you've dealt with your tax debt thus far, despite us sending you all these other notices. So we have an idea. We have a brilliant idea. This is the IRS talking. Our idea is we're just going to start taking your stuff to pay off your tax debt. Yeah, we're going to take money out of your bank account. We're going to send a notice to your employer to pay us instead of you, except a little bit of money every month so you can pay half your grocery bill. Okay? And that's what we're going to do. And that is called levy. When the IRS starts taking your stuff, that's called a levy. Bank levy, wage levy. And they say it, right here. This is your notice of intent to levy. Okay? IRS telling you, look, Bob, you gotta pay your balance before date in the future, or we will levy your property. We're gonna start taking your stuff. But that's not all the Notice LT11 is. What does it say in the second part of the heading? Okay, notice of intent to levy and your collection due process right to a hearing. This is a hearing that you can request before an IRS appeals officer. It's called a collection due process hearing, CDP hearing for short. In this hearing, you have a shot to argue your case before an IRS appeals officer and say, hey, look, I know I haven't responded. I didn't deal with this when the IRS sent me all those other notices and letters and things. And I know it's the IRS's idea to start taking my stuff, but hey, I have a better idea. How about you let me pay off my debt over time in an installment agreement? How about that? Or how about you let me pay off only a portion of my debt because I truly cannot afford to pay off this debt, nor does it look like I will be able to before the debt drops off at the 10-year statute of limitations. It's called an offer in compromise. Or, hey, IRS, I can afford to make you monthly payments, sure. But those monthly payments, I can't pay enough to pay off this whole debt. I'm going to have to pay less. You're going to get something over this installment agreement, but it's not going to pay off my whole debt. That's called a partial payment installment agreement, right? Or maybe, hey, IRS, I don't qualify for an offer in compromise. I understand that, but maybe you can place me in hardship or currently non-collectible status for a time while I figure out how to tackle this tax debt. These are all tax relief options I've talked about many times before on this channel. You can find a link at the top of the screen to my video about all of them, covering them all at a basic level, and I've created more detailed videos about each one. So in a nutshell, that's what the LT11 is. The IRS telling you that it intends to levy you or start taking your stuff, but also giving you notice that you do have the right to request a hearing if you don't like the IRS's idea to take your stuff. So that's what the LT11 is. Why does the IRS send you the LT11? Or why did you receive the LT11? Well, this kind of relates to what the LT11 is. But basically, you have a tax debt, and the IRS has sent you notices in the past, and now the IRS wants to take levy action against you, and the IRS is legally required to send you this notice via certified mail before it starts taking your stuff. Okay, it has to give you this notice, particularly with respect to how to request a CDP hearing, at least 30 days before it starts taking your stuff. Okay, and that 30-day deadline is important. Now, there are other kinds of notices that could function and satisfy this requirement as well. For example, if you have a revenue officer, the letter 1058 would be the letter that tells you about your CDP rights. But if you're with ACS, IRS Automated Collection System, you don't have a dedicated revenue officer assigned to your collections account with the IRS, you're likely going to be receiving the LT11 in order for the IRS to satisfy its requirement to let you know about your CDP rights before it can start levying you. Okay, so now we've talked about what the LT11 is and why you received it, why the IRS sends it. Let's just go over this thing page by page, part by part, so you know what you're looking at. And then at the end, like I said, I'll tell you exactly what you should do if you got one. Okay, top right, notice name LT11. Okay, we established that. Notice date, this is very important. Okay, because 30 days from this date, and those 30 days includes weekends and things like that. So 30 days from that date is your deadline to request one of these hearings. Okay, and I'll tell you how to do that later in this video. Case reference number, I redacted that. You may need that number when speaking with the IRS about your case. Taxpayer ID number, this should be the last four of your social there. Your name and address will be here. I redacted that obviously for our client's privacy. We've talked about the heading here. Okay, now let's go to this paragraph. So this says, to taxpayer, as of August, whatever date of the notice, as of August 19, 2024, we haven't received your overdue tax after sending several notices to you. You must pay your balance before September 19, 2024. I wish they had a comma there. Isn't that good grammar? Or we will levy, i.e. seize your property. If you do not make your payment now, we'll consider your noncompliance an active choice and you could face a levy. Amount due immediately. For this particular taxpayer, $71,362.54. They're basically trying to scare the taxpayer into paying up within 30 days, or the IRS is saying they're going to start taking the taxpayer's stuff to pay their tax debt. Payment must be received before September 19, 2024 to avoid a levy on your property. For option C, page 2, we'll talk about those payment options. What you need to do immediately. This is what the IRS says you need to do immediately. Okay. So this is what the IRS says because it wants you to pay, right? It wants your bank routing number, your bank account number, and then it wants you to go here, irs.gov/direct pay, and pay, right? It wants you to pay this balance in full. That's what they want you to do, right? That's their whole reason for existence, right? To collect money from taxpayers. Okay. I mean, yes, there's other things in their mission statement, et cetera, but at the core of the IRS's mission, it's to enforce the tax laws of this country and collect money from taxpayers, and collect delinquent returns and things like that too. But that, the end goal of that is to collect money from taxpayers. All right. Consequences if you do not pay immediately. Dun, dun, dun. We will levy, we will seize, levy your property or your rights to property if you fail to comply. Property include wages and other income, bank accounts, business assets, personal assets, including your car and home, Social Security benefits, Alaska Permanent Fund dividends, or state tax refund. So they're basically saying, hey, we can go after it all, even your Social Security benefits. Yes, even your Social Security benefits. Now, I've covered this in other videos. Okay, Social Security, fair game. They could even automatically levy, apart from a manual levy, up to 15%. SSDI, they can't do the automatic 15% levy, but they can do a manual levy. SSI, though, the supplemental security income, the IRS actually can't levy that. Okay, just word to the wise. I covered this stuff in other videos, but I just wanted to mention that here. They can file notice of federal tax lien against you, notifying your creditors that we have a claim or lien against all your property. If we file the lien, it may be difficult to sell or borrow against your property. I've covered the notice of federal tax lien in other videos. Very common question we get at Choice Tax Relief is, does the notice of federal tax lien, does that affect my credit? Watch the video, link to the top of the screen to get the answer to that question. The U.S. Department of, and this is below this here, the U.S. Department of State may revoke or decline, or may revoke your passport or decline to issue or renew a passport if you have seriously delinquent tax debt totaling more than $62,000. Yes, that is true. We do have clients all the time who come to us who receive that notice from the IRS saying, hey, we've told the State Department about your tax debt, and yeah, they're probably not going to let you renew your passport or get a new passport. The revocation of the passport is a bit more rare. We have seen it happen, but the most common consequence is you'll be unable to renew or obtain a new transcript. So the other options it was talking about on page 1 was other options to pay your tax debt, okay? So here, pay online by card, pay by check or money order. I'm not going to go through all these instructions. Pay your balance over time. So believe it or not, if you owe up to $50,000, you can set up your own installment agreement with the IRS online, okay? It might not be an installment agreement that works for you because you're going to want to get the most amount of money possible out of you. But if you owe up to 50, you can actually set one up online, irs.gov/OPA. Okay, you owe more than 50. It's more of a fight, and you basically have to do it over the phone or via form, and it's a struggle. Here's some online information about the IRS website if you want to look at that. All right, here we go. Now, I'm kind of sneaking ahead here. I'm going to actually skip this how to request an appeals hearing and come back to it in a little bit. So don't let me forget. Now, in this section, your billing summary, okay? This cat only owed for 1 year, 2013. But it's basically a breakdown here of the amount that was owed on the original return and the accumulated interest that has been assessed against the taxpayer. The failure to pay penalty, it's 0 here. I'm wondering if he got some penalty abatement there. That's possible, because that would usually run if there's no outstanding tax debt. And then here's the total, which would be the sum of these 3 things. Again, they're reminding you, your payment must be received on or before September. Well, is this a typo? Right? That says September 9th. The notice was sent on August 19th. Yeah, that's a typo. The deadline here is actually September 19th. I don't know how they do that, because I'm sure these are like merged fields that like should automatically populate out of their system. Or wait, hold on. Okay, time out. This is different. Your payments must be received on or before September 9, 2024 to avoid additional interest charges and applicable penalties, right? So that's different than the deadline before which they will levy. So this is basically a good amount through September 9th. I guess you could call it a payoff amount. Okay, you can view your account online, obviously. You could call 833-282-7220 for a detailed calculation of your penalties and interest. In these notices, they used to send like every quarter's interest calculation, because the IRS, if you know how IRS interest works, and I've created a video about it, link at the top of the screen here. It can be adjusted every quarter theoretically. And in these notices, they used to send this whole table of every quarter and what your interest was for each quarter. I guess in this redesigned LT11, they're not doing that. It gives you code sections you can look up if you like reading the tax code. Section 6601 for interest, section 6651 for the failure to pay penalty. Okay, now this one is kind of spooky, right? And this freaks people out. Advance notice of our intent to contact third parties. Basically, the IRS is saying that, yeah, we're generally just going to talk to you or your tax professional, your POA, about your case, okay? However, we may talk to other people about you. Could be a neighbor, a bank, an employer, or employees. Okay, so they're kind of telling you, hey, this might happen. They might ask questions. And what are they looking for here? They're looking for information about what you have typically, right? Like, hey, we think this guy has a boat. Hey, neighbor, Have you ever seen this guy with a boat? Oh yeah, he goes boating all the time. You know, you try to hide your boat from the IRS or something like that, right? And then they give you the period when they're probably going to do that, right? It's like a 12-month period. We intend to contact other persons during the period beginning October 4th and ending 1 year later on October 5th. You have the right to request a list of those contacted by calling or writing us or asking us during a personal interview. They do not always do this, by the way, even though they're telling you they will. They just have to give you notice they're going to do this, just in case they have to, right? But this does not mean they're going to be calling every neighbor on your block and talking to every neighbor on your block about you and your collections case, right? Or you and trying to get information about you. All right, then here, this is pretty typical stuff they put in a lot of their notices. There's a taxpayer bill of rights here. It's talking about taxpayer advocate service. Lots of people think like, oh, the taxpayer advocate service can do like everything for me. They're really not. I mean, it's really just if the IRS, let's say IRS automated collections isn't being responsive to your case, or they're not doing things right, then you could talk to Taz and maybe they could work it out and get the IRS back on track. But it's not like they're going to like represent you like an EA, CPA, or attorney would, right? It's not like that, okay? And it even kind of says as much here. Tax can offer you help if your tax problems causing a financial difficulty. You've tried and been unable to resolve your issue with the IRS, or you believe in the IRS system, process, or procedure just isn't working as it should. And I know that's because we've talked to Taz many times before for our clients. They're going to take a position on things, and if they don't agree with your position, it's just like any other IRS employee, right? And then sometimes you got to take it to appeals. They talk about low-income taxpayer clinics. I'm not going to dwell on that. They talk a lot about that here. State bar associations, state or local societies of accountants or enrolled agents, or other nonprofit tax professional organizations may also be able to provide referrals. Yay. Okay. Then at the end here is the payment coupon. If you want to pay by check, the whole thing here, you got to make it payable to the United States Treasury, right? You can also pay a partial amount. You don't necessarily have to pay that whole amount. Taxpayer ID number. You want to write your social on the check, and mail it here, right? It'll show up in the envelope. So yeah, that's the LT11. Okay, so that's the LT11 part by part, and now the moment you've all been waiting for. Now I'm going to talk about what to do. What exactly should you do if you received IRS Notice LT11? And for that, I am going to go back. Where am I? I'm going to go back here. How to request an appeals hearing. Okay? Because most of the time, folks, it's not tax advice, not legal advice about your particular situation, because I don't know your particular situation. This is a YouTube video. Even if you write a comment, I don't know the whole comprehensive thing that we would know if you were a client. But in general, I'm just going to tell you what we do. Most of the time in these cases. Not saying you should do this, but most of the time when we get clients that receive an LT11, our standard course of action is to request a collection due process hearing using Form 12153. Okay, and making sure that thing is postmarked by the date mentioned here, which is 30 days from the notice date. Okay, so since these LT11s have been coming in, we've been having someone in our office go to the post office, right? Go to the post office, make sure these are mailed out, certified mail with return receipt, right? So we can make sure that postmark date is on there. So in case our CDP request gets delayed by the Postal Service somehow, or in the IRS, we can say, no, this is when we sent it. Look, certified mail with return receipt, that's the postmark date. Okay, that is best practice. So you got to request a CDP hearing using Form 12153. And I'm going to create another video about how to complete Form 12153. Just for YouTube SEO purposes, it's better to create one video on the LT11 and another video on the 12153. But we can kind of pull it up briefly here just for your viewing pleasure. And actually, one thing I want to say about CDP hearings. You have 30 days from the date of the notice to request a CDP hearing, okay, the date of your LT11 or equivalent. Now, like I said, most of the time what we do is request a CDP hearing. However, sometimes, well, let's back up. If you do not make that 30-day deadline, okay, let's say you're late, okay, you can still request what's called an equivalent hearing. You can request what's called an equivalent hearing, which is kind of like a CDP hearing, but not really. I'll explain the difference in a little bit. Within 12 months of that date on your LT11 notice. Okay. Now there are significant differences between a CDP hearing and an equivalent hearing. I'll tell you two that are usually the most pertinent when we're strategizing about what we should do for a client. First thing, it's kind of getting technical, so follow along, please, if you're willing to. Tax debt has a 10-year limit, or the IRS has a 10-year limit in which to collect a tax debt. Okay, that's called the collection statute of limitations. Okay, 10 years from the date the IRS is assessed, the IRS has 10 years to collect that tax. If they don't collect that tax within that 10-year period, or they don't collect all of it, then whatever is left drops off. IRS can't collect it from the taxpayer. It's dead. Now, there are certain things that can extend that 10-year time limit the IRS has to collect a tax debt. Submitting an offer in compromise, filing bankruptcy. Okay, there's other things. And one of those things is a CDP hearing. So that IRS's 10-year statute of limitations to collect your tax debt, or debts if there's multiple years, is extended from the time you submit your CDP hearing request on Form 12153 all the way until appeals makes its decision on your case in the hearing. Okay, and if you go for judicial review in the tax court system, it is the CSET is told, the collection statute is told during that period as well. Now, this is not the case with an equivalent hearing. An equivalent hearing does not toll the statute. So sometimes, if we're looking at a taxpayer's case and we're saying, wow, his tax debt's dropping off pretty quickly, like in the next 12 months, we may wait until after the 30 days to request a CDP hearing and request an equivalent hearing instead, so there's less time for the IRS to collect after the hearing, right? Especially in PPIA situations where we want, to shorten the number of months that the taxpayer has to pay off their balance with the installment agreement. Okay. Something else, the IRS is barred from levying you during the pendency of your CDP hearing, right? While you're waiting to have your CDP hearing after you request it. Legally barred. They're not legally barred from levying you during the pendency of an equivalent hearing, though it is their policy to not levy a taxpayer during the pendency of an equivalent hearing. I guess I'm going to tell you three things. Third thing you need to know. If you don't like appeals decision in your CDP hearing, you can contest that in tax court. Okay? You have tax court rights with the CDP hearing. You do not have tax court rights with an equivalent hearing if you disagree with the appeals officer's decision. Okay? So these are things we weigh for our clients when deciding where to go the CDP route or the equivalent hearing route. Just in our practice, most of the time, when someone has received this notice, we go the CDP route, but the equivalent hearing may be appropriate in some circumstances. Okay, so just real quickly, this isn't the focus of this video. The LT11 is, and I don't know how long has this been. I don't know. It's already over 20 minutes. My goodness. And you got to love the IRS for these typos. Look, visit. Anyway, sorry. All right, so Form 12153. Use this form to request a collection due process hearing or equivalent hearing. Basically, you can see it's only a couple pages here. Okay, it's not really a super long form, but you got to fill it out correctly, and you got to have some reason here why you're saying the IRS should just start taking money from you. Okay, just in our practice, the most common boxes we'll check are this. I guess I can't check it. Are this one, are this one, or this one, okay? And then installment agreement's obviously an installment agreement. Offer and compromise is an offer and compromise. And currently unable to pay is like hardship or CNC status. We usually write a little explanation here. Now, just as a matter of course, we have clients who come to us like the day before their deadline. We don't always have a 433A prepared for them when we submit the CDP hearing, and that's okay, right? It's more important that you get the CDP hearing request out within that 30-day deadline if you conclude that CDP is the way to go, than it is to have all your ducks in a row and all your financials ready to submit to the IRS along with the 12153. Okay. Again, I'm going to create a separate video on the 12153 because this video has already gotten quite long. But hey, yes, I hope this was informational for you. This is probably one of the most important videos I've created in a while because that LT11 notice is one of the most important and scary notices that you can receive from the IRS. If you'd like to watch my other videos about IRS notices, there's a playlist here at the top of the screen. If you want to know what your options are in dealing with the IRS, check out my videos on tax debt relief right down here in the bottom left. You want to reach out to us to deal with your LT11 to represent you before the IRS, give us a call at Choice Tax Relief, 866-8000-TAX. That's 866-8000-829. Or go to choicetaxrelief.com. Fill out the form on our website. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.